Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in for the day. First, we start off with upsetting news to a lot of people, sad news for sure. The deadliest day in U.S. As far as the coronavirus is concerned happened just yesterday. 3,000 deaths in one day. That is the highest number in a lot of places. Smaller communities are being hit harder now than they'd had been hit in the past. There were also some states that had seen a lot of loss of life that saw a lot of it. Illinois, New York, a few other places, etc. So this is the news story of the day, I guess, in a sense, just because of the number of it. And of course, it's going to be covered in a lot of places. It's going to be talked about in a lot of places. And I know that everyone will immediately start to somehow blame the president for everything going on in the world of health. I found several stories about the amount of people that have something called pandemic fatigue now, certainly in California, but a lot of places throughout the country. People feel as if it's too much. The demands are too much. There's a viral mix-up, a viral smash together of different, I'm looking for a better term for it, essentially a trailer of different things that business owners have said on Fox News, and every single business owner has begged our country to reconsider the lockdowns and the closures that exist because they are all going out of business. They are all suffering. And we have stories like this, stories like the one in MSN out of California about pandemic fatigue and how the everyday American just cannot continue to deal with the issues the way that they exist and the things we're being asked to do because of it, like stay at home, like go through lockdowns, like wear a mask. Wearing a mask is one of the most debated things in these smaller communities that I said are getting hit harder and harder. But as I tuned in to CNN, a place that I was weary to turn on, by the way, because I knew that the coverage of this would be that, Trump is killing America, essentially. I actually got a very different thing, and I got a couple different reactions to that. First, here's Jim Acosta, and I'm only playing this because, every so often I love the idea that some reporters, some people that cover the news and throw the questions out there at any of the press briefings, claim that they're not biased individuals, and then they say kind of ridiculous things. But Jim Acosta was on, and he was talking about the transition, the White House moving on, and how Donald Trump is handling that, how President Trump is handling it. And he said, obviously, very flattering things, right?
Right. I talked to a source close to the White House earlier this evening who said the only person who believes this anymore is President Trump himself. Now, that might be stretching things a bit because the president does have his enablers, and you just ticked through several of them. But what they say publicly is different from what they say privately. And I've talked to a couple of different Trump advisors who have said there are attorneys who want nothing to do with the president's case, Trump-friendly attorneys who do not want to be arguing any of this in a court of law because, by the way, not only does it put them in an embarrassing situation making these ridiculous claims, it could have serious consequences for their legal career.
It could have serious consequences. So deadliest day in America, 3,000 lives lost to coronavirus. And for some reason, and I know that the president is still going through lawsuits, he's still using what is an American right of any individual to go to the court system if you feel you've been wronged and attempt through the court system to correct that wrongdoing. Have I seen proof that there was voter fraud and election fraud? No. But I have continued to say this before I get back to Jim and what he says about lawyers losing all of their legal credibility by representing the president in one of these lawsuits. That's ridiculous as far as the take goes. But I will say that the election we had this year was obviously incredibly unique. The amount of mail-in voting was extremely different than any year in the past in a lot of places. Yes, some states like Arizona are used to that. They have a lot of mail-in ballots anyway, but a lot of places do not. And there's been a lot of coverage as to whether or not some of those laws and some of those things were changed correctly, appropriately in time for this past election, or if maybe some things were done a little bit differently than normal, and maybe even illegally so. That's part of the Pennsylvania lawsuit is whether or not the changes to mail-in balloting were actually appropriate. And I'm not saying that I believe there's any fraud. I'm not saying that I believe the president will win his lawsuits, but he is going to the court system to try, and that's something that apparently, even according to Jim, he still believes in. And yet, instead of covering the coronavirus and the topic that was so on everyone's mind in the world of of news and not necessarily this story about the lawsuits. Now it's all about the lawsuits and how that's killing democracy and ruining people's careers, I guess. And that it makes no sense to me. If the narrative for so long is one thing, if everyone wants to talk about the health crisis that is the pandemic, that is coronavirus, and the ways in which the current administration may or may not have assisted. By the way, Operation Warp Speed, tremendous success. Not a lot of people talk about it. Not a lot of people say that the vaccine being available, maybe this weekend in some places, and maybe available to everyday Americans by mid to next year. That is significantly valuable information for a lot of us and significantly important to maybe mention a little bit more, but that doesn't get talked about. Instead, lawsuits. And Jim Acosta, go ahead, continue. Let's hear the fair and balanced reporting.
And putting that to the side just for a second, Anderson, I've also talked to Trump advisors who say what the president is doing is dangerous to the country.
Dangerous to the country. You keep hearing it's dangerous to the country. The president going through the legal system. I don't know if it's like, a Lifetime movie that's got to go this road. I've never had lawsuits be dangerous to the country before, like these ones are dangerous to the country. And again, I'm not saying I agree with them. I'm not saying that I believe, and I know a lot of people do. There's actually a new poll for people that watch Fox News, which it still has fairly good ratings. But anyone that watches Fox News regularly, only 20% of those individuals think that the election was fair. 80% of people who watch some of the more conservative news outlets out there believe the election was fraudulent somehow, believe that it was somehow, that's significant. That matters. Go ahead, Jim.
Dangerous to democracy. And I think it's high time, Anderson. We talk about these anonymous sources all the time, what they're telling us behind the scenes and so forth. It's time for one of these advisors to come forward and say this publicly.
Yes.
What the president is doing is dangerous to the country because, as you know, Anderson, we can laugh about these sorts of these claims that he's making in court and so on, but there are millions and millions of people who believe him and will continue to believe him after he leaves office in January.
Yeah,
Anderson.
I mean, it is. It is not a joke. I mean, it's right. It is dangerous. Jim Acosta.
Dangerous to the country. And by the way, when I screamed yes to the anonymous people coming forward, that's because I want to see that they exist. I would love it if the anonymous CNN source on any information actually stepped forward and said valuable things in the public eye, because it would mean a lot more than the individuals that are giving it to us now and the way in which they report anything. And obviously, as I said, the story of the day to me, unfortunately, is the large number of lives that were lost to the coronavirus in the last 24 hours. And yet, if you turn on some of the stations that for months had been telling you they care about you and they were covering stories like that for you, now they're talking about the lawsuits all the time and how they're going to upend our democracy, which just makes, I don't even think that many people are paying attention. In all honesty, this is my take. I don't think that many Americans, the ones who support the president or the ones who oppose him, are actually diving into the literature of the lawsuits that are being thrown out in courts that are not the national one. When something gets to the Supreme Court, and something inevitably will, they say that things almost did, and yes, some things have been turned away, but I eventually see a lawsuit in the world of corruption in our election making it all the way to the Supreme Court. Now, I've told a lot of people that I know that I believe this is utterly necessary, even if they tell me, if they look back at me and say that the lawsuits don't make any sense, why would the Supreme Court hear them? Public interest. I don't know if anyone's aware of that. Public interest in this case is off the charts. Millions of people believe one thing, millions of others believe something else. So let the Supreme Court hear the arguments, hear them in a courtroom, judge them, weigh in. And if it's a slam dunk one way or the other, I personally believe that might start to change minds. I believe that a Supreme Court built with several members from the current president, if they weigh in on a lawsuit after actually hearing it, not throwing it out, but actually going through the process. And by the way, anyone that's told me that I'm now using the Supreme Court in a way that's inappropriate, like they shouldn't get those cases there. Come on. They have better things to do. We've had all kinds of things in front of our legal system, in front of our politicians. I mean, case in point, baseball. At one point, baseball players had to go up for hearings. This wasn't necessarily the Supreme Court, but they had to go up for hearings and talk to people about steroids in that sport because of the public interest in it. So we can't go the road of a case actually making it all the way to trial and going through that process to get a final word for a lot of Americans who are still confused. We can't. Until we do, I don't think that anyone's diving into the local lawsuits enough for us to understand this at all. All right, I got to take a break. Greg Collins filling in on the Chad Benson Show. After the break, I want to talk about a new Amazon product. It is for your health. It's here to help us, but it might be the most invasive to your personal information of anything they've ever created, and that says a lot.
You go, boy.
This isn't about right or left. This is just about right and wrong.
Right you are, Chad. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I do want to get to a bunch of different audio throughout the day today. I want to talk a little bit more about the difference in the coverage as far as some reporters go and other reporters go in the world of talking about now the legal challenges the president and his administration is bringing as far as the election is concerned. But I do have to play this. This is Fox and Friends. This is Brian Kilmeade. I think this is very interesting audio for one reason and one reason only. The Hunter Biden story is essentially gone. I don't really see it or hear it a lot of places at all anymore. The Hunter Biden story, the laptop story, it came up a tad. The president brought it up in some debates. But for the most part, everyone has just kind of thrown this story out there, not acknowledged it at all. And so let's hear from Brian as he's talking a little bit more about it this morning.
There's one.
Hold on. I got to pull that down a little bit. That's a little loud. I don't want to ruin your speakers. Hold on, let's try this again.
There's one guy that got unimpeachable integrity, and I dare you to challenge it, Tony Bobulinski. And he uses this term big guy. And I'm just wondering, when his tax attorneys had a chance to itemize the Kazakhstan transactions, the Moscow transactions, the Ukrainian transactions, and the Chinese transaction, if there's a line there for the big guy. Because it's pretty specific what Tony Bobulinski said. And what is amazing is you have CNN's Jeff Zucker says, I don't think we should be repeating unsubstantiated smears just because the right-wing media suggests we should. They're not smears. There's actual emails and interactions with government officials and meetings with perhaps maybe the future president of the United States that's never been asked nor substantially denied. When you have pictures of yourself naked smoking crack and it's not the worst thing on your laptop, you're in trouble. So that is what's on that laptop. And I feel bad for that repair person. There's all this carnage along the way. He took in a laptop. He couldn't get a call back from Hunter Biden, and now he's destroyed, out of business, and he's shuttered. What he did is call the FBI and said, take the hard drive, and then later he got in touch with Rudy Giuliani. And now, after 2018, the FBI is finally emerging, perhaps, with the results of an investigation. Bobulinski sat for between 5 and 8 hours with the FBI to tell what he knows about international transaction with a guy who's constantly recovering from crack addiction.
This is a very interesting story, obviously, to maybe continue to follow, and one that's almost nowhere. We have constant coverage of the Trump legal team, and we have almost no coverage of President-elect Joe Biden, who at this point is still President-elect Joe Biden. I know that some people don't like to hear it stated that way, but that is the truth. And him stepping into this administration, taking control of the White House. And already, one of the other things that Brian said a little later on is that this might be great news for Kamala Harris, which is very interesting. A lot of people assumed throughout this entire process that Joe was not really intent on being the president for very long. And I'm not saying that I believe in the conspiracy theory, but if this story isn't really out there and then winds up breaking within weeks, I don't know, after the inauguration in January, it would be interesting to see if a few weeks in this becomes a big deal. But the odds are probably that it won't. All right, let's shift gears. Amazon is putting a new health product out on the market. This is a health product that's $65 for the Halo Band. They are very excited about it. It's going to do a lot of very valuable things. And certainly in the time of COVID-19, probably something people are very tempted to consider to purchase. The thing is, though, because it's got a microphone embedded in it, because all Amazon products have microphones embedded in them, and a bunch of other ways in which it can monitor you throughout your day, it is considered the most invasive product created by a company that sort of, I guess, created a monopoly on invasive products to begin with, of your digital information, of your life, essentially, in order to monitor your health. And I do wonder if people care. And I mean that honestly, and I know a lot of people do. But truthfully, these products all sell very, very well. I have quite a few Amazon devices in my own home, so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite as I talk about this, because I like the convenience of it. At the same time, I don't think I would wear another microphone as I walk around. I already have the smartwatch and the smartphone, and I'm sure a lot of people feel as I do that they might be listening a tad more than I want them to. But this device, just monitoring all your information, basically, because it's a health app too, you need to input a lot of that very, private stuff, a lot of the information about you as a person, that if it got hacked, if that data was pulled, if your health data was pulled off of this little device that you're walking around with and wearing around your wrist, And if it gets out there in the world, this would be akin to the biggest versions of fraudulent pulling of your information that could exist in the world. And you might pay Bezos $60 for it. I don't know, $65 for it. If that's something that you're interested in, that's more power to you. It actually can create a 3D rendering of your near naked body. That's one of the things it does, to check to see how much fat you're losing, to check to see how much weight, not because those photos, that image can be stored and then hacked and then taken somewhere else. No, that's not why. It's because they just need it there to see if you've been losing a little bit of weight around the midsection. But that is a real thing. It can do a 3D rendering of your body. Oh, man. Do we think that this is the beginning of the end, those apps? Is that what it's really going to be? We talk about all these other things. We talk about the lawsuits maybe, according to some, being a step too far for our democracy. But the truth is that it might be technology that takes us down. I know Facebook is going to see some antitrust lawsuits happening in the near future. I'd like to talk about those in a bit. And also this Japanese company that sells your face. I had talked about it before, I believe, but it's getting more traction now. It's getting covered more and more places. The company believes that it can sell realistic-looking masks and realistic-looking things by actually buying people's faces. They pay about $300 per person for a photocopy of your face that gets 3D printed onto all different kinds of things, and then they sell it for, I think, $750. But they're offering individuals, actual human beings, the ability to sell their face to a company, their likeness, because that's not problematic. It doesn't matter if my naked rendered body is on an Amazon device, and if my face is out there with a Japanese company, nothing can go wrong. There's no way that anyone would use that inappropriately. There's no way that the movie Face Off becomes a real life thing, right? We all don't think that. In other news, and there's a lot of other news to get to today, I saw that Santa has a pretty significant salary, so maybe we'll cover that a little bit later on, and quite a bit more. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. I'm Craig Collins filling in. More after this.
Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad is back on Monday. He's going to get an extended weekend, which he very much deserves. It's been a crazy time, and I'm just happy to be here with you. And I actually would love to talk a little bit more about this. I've seen a few different news stories today about and in the last 24 hours, I guess I should say, about the Trump lawsuits. And I love the fact that it's so easy to tell in today's world that a lot of these reporters who claim to be professional journalists, not on any side, not biased at all, but you get to hear the biases. And this one is probably better than Acosta, who I think I covered a little earlier today. This is John Karl. John Karl is someone who's more respected than Jim Acosta, I would say, although maybe, depending on the circle, about the same. And here's what he said this morning as well.
Well, he's already preparing. He's already set up his own PAC. He's likely to declare he's going to run for president, perhaps as he's heading out the door. But, his hold on the Republican Party right now is, in part, he has that still incredibly solid support among the Republican base voters. But there's also fear of what he'll do over the next 42 days that he is in power. And, Brian, if you look at what he has done, he's been so jealously guarding that notion that he is not a guy who loses, that he is the ultimate winner. That's the brand. But he is going down in a pretty spectacular fashion as a loser. And
okay, that's good. It's not biased at all. It's not. There's some wins. It's not like maybe Operation Warp Speed worked out fairly well. But no, he's going down as a legendary loser, according to one John Karl. Continue, non-biased reporter.
It's not just the election results. That's obviously the big thing. But look at his...
He had the second most votes in the history of the election for any president ever to run. He didn't win, but yeah, he did okay. Go ahead, John.
Behavior vis-a-vis the National Defense Authorization Act, the big defense bill, he has threatened to veto. This is something with, wide support among the Republican rank and file, Republican leadership, and Democrats as well. And he may lose that fight. I mean, that bill is likely to pass over his veto threat and may well be overridden. So what does it say about the invincible Donald Trump if he can't win in court, he can't win with the voters, he can't get state legislatures to overturn election results, and he can't even get Republican members of Congress to do what he wants in the face of a veto threat? He starts to look not just like a loser, but somebody who is impotent.
John Carl called President Trump impotent on news channels, and everybody's like, yeah, that's a regular, this non-biased reporting. That's fine. That's how you do that. By the way, the last thing he mentions, the thing that apparently is very important to John right now, a veto that might not work out. No one's going to remember that. No one's going to care or remember that. I promise you, maybe a month from now, if that, 2 months from now, that's not part of the legacy in either side. So it's sort of ridiculous to put that argument out there. And it amuses me. It does, that there's so much obsession over these lawsuits. And I know that there's a lot of people listening that believe that they have legitimacy. I know that there are. And I know that there's a lot of people in my industry that tell you on the air or on television or wherever that there's no real legal claims in here. There's no proof that's been provided. And for the most part, that's been true. However, I do continue to think that if we go down the road of these lawsuits, we have to do it in front of the public, and we have to do it with the Supreme Court involved. And anyone that says otherwise, I know a lion Ted Cruz is now involved in part of that process, but anyone that says otherwise, I don't think understands the interest the public has in this story, because that's the whole reason to do it. It's not because it does or doesn't have a legal basis, a value there, that it should be in front of the Supreme Court or it should be anywhere else. I'm not one to make that argument at all, by the way. I'm not a legal expert enough to suss out the legitimacy of these things. I haven't seen the proof out there in the world, but I'd like to see the Supreme Court discuss this story so that everyone, all of America, can watch. I mean, that's the most valuable way for us to process this. It's not the small courts. We got to get the big guy involved. We have to hear it out, and then they have to make a decision that all of us as Americans can try to understand. And just through that one lawsuit, maybe people start to have an opinion one way or the other. Maybe it changes a lot of minds in a way that surprises us. I'm not saying that I even know what side would come out victorious there, although obviously a lot of people assume that there would be a loss for the president, even in the Supreme Court. But let's do it. Let's go through it's the president of the United States claiming again and again that there was voter fraud and saying that he believes that there was voter fraud. And whether you like this guy or not, whether you support this president, that is a valuable office in our country. And that is a valuable claim that's being made. And for that reason and that reason alone, it should be seen in the Supreme Court. It should be seen to the degree that it needs to be seen so that the rest of us can understand. All right, shifting gears, there's some other stories in the news that I like a lot, a tad less serious, because on a day in which we've seen a high number of bad things in the world of coronavirus, I think we need some lighter stories. I think we need to take a little break, a shift gears a tad, and go to some things that are a little less serious. I love this story out of Vermont. There's a car that's been driving around that got covered by WCAX News. They're on your side all the time. This car is decked out in holiday lights, like fully covered, and not super bright ones, because if anybody's ever left the brights on behind you, you know that makes you mad. So you got to make sure the lights are not blaring, but just entire car covered in holiday lights. I think this is a great first step, but I think we as all of America need to embrace this even more. I think we should personally start wearing lights on our bodies. I do. In December, let's lift the spirits a little bit more. I don't mean just a little light up sweater, the holiday sweater, the ugly one. I mean full on take a set of lights. I don't know how you get them charged. I don't know what you plug them into, but I'm sure Bezos can figure that out. A little battery pack of some kind. And we all just walk around with Christmas lights on, maybe a few ornaments, depending on what you're into. And we just make that happen. I think it would lift a lot of spirits this year. I honestly do. I'm not totally kidding. I'm mostly kidding as I say that, but a tiny little part of me is not kidding and would like to see most of us walk through the rest of December wearing some amount of holiday lights. And it's like any party, any office party. You have the guy who will just put on one, the guy who will write a silly name on the name tag. I get it. That guy's out there. You also have the person who's going to wear all holiday lights around the entire body. And that'll just make me very happy. If you go to the grocery store or whatever's still open in your community and you see people walking around with all different kinds of decorations on their person, I think and it also is a good way to celebrate the holiday together, by the way. I'm taking too much time talking about this idea, but I really do like it. In other news, I saw this story that a man was robbing a bank in Mississippi. This is in Jackson, Mississippi. He's wearing a mask because you're told to do that. And while robbing the bank, he took the mask off. And I remember everybody talking about that one of the biggest dangers of all of us wearing masks is how much easier it would make it for criminals. I didn't know that bank robbers would be anti-mask people. I did not know that they'd be on that side of the conversation, but apparently at least this guy is. It's full view, and it's not like a quick second. It's not like he dipped the mask down for just a second to say a couple words. He just took it off. And I couldn't have fathomed that world, a year ago, that a bank robber would potentially get caught because video and photos would go viral of the guy's face after he took his mask down while robbing a bank. But that's the world we all live in. To quote producer Phil, who I just told this story to a second ago, you can't fix stupid. It does exist in this country, and that guy would be one of those people. In other news, and I love this story a lot for a lot of reasons, there's a World War II vet that went viral because he loves Coors Light. People actually bought him a bunch of Coors Light online. I think this went viral about a year ago. This gentleman, Andrew Slavinik, I believe, Slavinik, he just turned 103, and we checked in. The news checked in to see how Coors Light guy is doing, and he's doing great and still drinking Coors Light every single day. He says, I really think that is what is keeping me going this long. It's just the beer. So in news that you can use, maybe more so than news that makes you sad, a 103-year-old Air Force veteran says that the best way to keep going.
Hi, Phil. This is Megan calling from.
Is to just keep drinking the sweet, sweet Coors Light. In 1996, he actually started drinking regular Coors beer, according to his son. He switched to Coors Light about 15 years ago, and I think I am the one to blame for that switch because I've been drinking that for 25 years myself, but apparently it's worked out since then. So if you need some ideas today to have a little bit more joy in your life, just a quick recap of the things I said to do. If you rob a bank, keep the mask on. I would not suggest doing that, though. Wear some Christmas lights on your own human person and maybe have a Coors Light at some point throughout the day. This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. A lot more after this.
You stink like fear and white male privilege to me.
I do often out myself verbally as a gender. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm proud to be a gender.
Are you stupid? What? Are you kidding me?
Not a great way to use your white privilege.
Some people get it, some people don't.
You're listening to the Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. I saw this news in the world of Netflix, in the world of entertainment, and I'm in. I don't know if you're in, but I'm definitely in. Nick Cage will star in a limited series, a 6-episode series for Netflix called The History of Swear Words. Apparently, the actor, 56 years old, will go through the history of every unique word that exists that you don't want your kids saying up to a certain age. And they'll all be about 20 minutes long. It'll be educational in the expletives that are provided, according to Netflix. The history lesson you didn't think you needed this year. There is no Schoolhouse Rock equivalent to this, according to them. The Loud and Proudly Profane series that explores the origins, pop culture usage, science, and cultural impact of certain words, of certain curse words, will be out there in the world in a very short amount of time. One, Netflix is wonderful because they approve pretty much anything. I got to have a TV idea approved by them at some point in the near future. I'm just going to start shooting them emails, and I imagine they'll say yes to something. And two, the casting of Nick Cage is genius. I love Nicolas Cage. I don't know if you do. I love him not for respectable reasons, not because I think he's a tremendous actor, but because there's something about him that's just captivating every time you see it. And this is a perfect casting as far as I'm concerned, and something that I'll definitely watch all 6 episodes of. I hope they come out one at a time. I hope they actually go back to like releasing them the way that some other stuff does, not the Netflix way, but give me 1 episode a week so I can take a lot of time to talk about this. Because if January is going to be what they're all telling us it's going to be, if it's going to be as difficult and as many people are going to be staying home all the time, we need something to really bring us into, the new year together. And that, to me, that works as great as anything. The History of Swear Words. I don't know who pitched it. I do want to know if this was Cage's idea or someone said that we need Nick Cage for this project. But it's a great idea to me. And again, one of the many reasons I love the fact that so many of the streaming platforms out there are doing cool things. I can't believe that HBO will be showing a brand new Wonder Woman movie live, both in theaters, of course, around Christmas and on their streaming service. And that's one of a few streaming services that are going to do this. And as far as I understand, in the world of HBO, that's going to be entirely free But I wonder if we keep barreling down that road too, just to kind of pivot from the Nick Cage story and talk about how so many of our media things and our big tentpole maybe movie things for the foreseeable future are going to be released in multiple places and maybe at very different costs. And I wonder if you plan on watching. I wonder if you plan on taking in the movie in a theater or in the comfort of your own home, if they're open, I guess, in a theater or in the comfort of your own home, because I'm going to watch a movie like that for free. Sure, no problem. I already have the HBO. That sounds great. 1/3 of people are really not looking forward to a conversation they're likely to have in the next few days. This is breaking the news to moms specifically that they won't be coming home for Christmas. I think SNL made a joke about this just this past weekend on their TV show that some watch and some don't. But I do think that there's a really valid point in the silliness of this topic, and I saw it on a couple of the press wires out there. But this is actually a real survey, and 1/3 of Americans are worried about talking about that with mom specifically, or I guess a parent. Doesn't that say something about the other side of this argument? And I'm not trying to make it again. I understand where we're at. I understand that yesterday was one of the deadliest days as far as the coronavirus is concerned in our country, the deadliest day so far in this fight against the pandemic. So I get it. And I'm not sitting here and telling you to ignore or do things that you're not comfortable doing. But this story to me, and the fact that it's being kind of joked about and how are you going to tell mom, says a lot about the value of family and the individuals in that family, the elderly ones, if it's a grandma or someone that might just rather you come home or rather they get to see you on a holiday like Christmas than deal with the opposite. And that is an argument that seems to be, in my opinion, neglected but deserved to be had. It does seem to be valuable to have that discussion with your loved ones and do whatever it is that you think is appropriate to do in that regard. Be an American. Use the freedom of your own choices as the way in which you go about your life. That's something that's very valuable here in this country. And if grandma and grandpa are worried, if grandma and grandpa are scared, and a lot of people are, and a lot of places are going to make this very difficult for you to go ahead and do, just like with Thanksgiving. But if the end result is that everyone would like to try to see each other, then there are things you can do. If you want to take it as seriously as quarantining in your house for a while, getting some tests to make sure you don't have the virus, and then trying to see family members, that is a move that is possible. And so I saw that story out there on the wire and thought to myself, man, even though this is being covered in a way that's kind of silly, in a way that's, certainly the SNL version of mom doesn't understand, but I have to tell her. The truth is that there's value in 1/3 of Americans thinking that way, because a lot of family members want you to come home anyway. So that is something to consider this holiday season, in my opinion, as we get closer and closer to Christmas, is the idea that maybe there's a conversation that exists here. And if you don't do that, if you can't go that road, just be Italian Forrest Gump. There's a guy out there who got in an argument with a loved one well under lockdown the other day, left the house to cool off. So he's talking to himself about it. He wound up walking 280 miles. 280. What was that fight about? What were the back and forth parts of the conversation for Italian Forrest Gump to walk, not run, that distance, just talking to himself? I'm convinced he lost the argument and he thought of the perfect thing to say to the missus or whoever he was fighting with right when he got out of the house, and then beat himself up for 280 miles that he didn't have that response at the time. I guarantee you that's at least 150 of the miles he walked is, why didn't I say this? He eventually got fined, by the way, because he was breaking the lockdown rules. He's going to have to pay about $485 to the police for breaching curfew. But again, I mean, if you look at the guy's license, if you look at the fact that he's got no vehicle of any kind, and you're like, sir, where are you coming from? I had a fight with the missus. I really didn't pay attention. How far am I? 280 miles in the opposite direction. And if you're the missus and you didn't go looking for him, again, that says even more to me about maybe the value in this fight. I need an update. If any story is to get a second set of coverage, if the news media in Italy is listening to the Chad Benson Show by any chance, you got to check back in with Italian Forrest Gump. That is what he's being called on social media, because I do need to know. I need to know the resolution of that fight. And if it's maybe the first time, or if this has happened before and just the first time we've heard of it, that he goes on a walk after a fight to cool down, and that maybe this just happened to be one of the longer ones. I don't know. But it's fantastic to me, and a great bit of exercise, by the way. If you do want to get out of the house and just get around, it does seem to make sense. He said that along the way, he met a lot of people who offered him different food and drink, exactly like the movie Forrest Gump. I'm okay, just a bit tired, was his reaction when he was apprehended by the police. And he said, I came here on foot. I didn't use any transportation at all. I don't think he had any idea how far he'd gone. I do think that's true, too, that he just had no concept of how much he had traveled. And he probably gave, you know what, too? If they drove him all the way back home, the 280 miles, he told the whole story to the cops. He told the entire fight to the cops, and they picked a side. There's no way you can't pick a side that long, and I don't know who did what's right and wrong. That's the thing. I don't have the fight. I desperately need the information about this fight. Italian News. This is Chad Benson Show. My name's Craig Collins. Hopefully I'll talk to you again in a sec.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins, filling in. The first story, the biggest story of the day, at least according to me, maybe not to some of the news places out there that exist in the world, because, of course, you got to cover the campaign, the presidential lawsuits that exist out there in the world, the administration's lawsuits against the election itself, when in reality, the biggest story of the day, for maybe one of the first times in a little while, not that it's something we've forgotten, of course, is the sad number in the coronavirus deaths that took place on Wednesday. We had the highest number in the history of our country yesterday, and I saw at least a few different medical guests on some of these channels, on some of these news sites, these news places, discussing Christmas in great detail. And by the way, as this doctor starts speaking about this, he does mention at the tail end that it's not something we're discussing, and yet I think that's the only time he gets this wrong. We are constantly discussing what should and shouldn't go on in the holiday season as far as Thanksgiving is concerned and now Christmas. But he does paint a fairly grave picture, unfortunately, about the virus itself and our fight against it. But by the way, as I say all that, I do want to continue to mention that the vaccine progress is tremendous, and we're getting closer and closer to that being a reality, at least for workers out there in the medical communities, and eventually for all of us here in the United States. Obviously, that treatment can't come at a quicker time. But let's get to one of the medical professionals speaking on the news. I believe this was CNN News earlier today.
I think we've tried to, you might say, split the middle. I mean, for example, I very much support the CDC's new estimates today. I think they're right on the mark. But I have a real problem with the CDC's recommendations for what to do over the holiday period. You know, it's nuanced. It's basically saying don't get together, but if you are going to get together, do these things. That's like telling somebody don't drive drunk, but if you do drive drunk, these are the best ways to do it. We have to be really hard. I don't care if I'm accused of being the Grinch that stole Christmas, but you know what? I want you to be around for next Christmas and the Christmas after that. We should be having a very, very hard discussion right now of why we can't have Christmas 2020 like we had in 19 or that we hope to have in 2021. And we're not doing that right now. We are not having that kind of discussion.
We're not? That makes no sense to me that he says we're not, because I think that's all the news coverage is as far as holidays are concerned. It is 100% about how you should and shouldn't celebrate the holiday. And most people in the world of the medical community and or in the world of talking heads on television are telling you not to do anything. The CDC giving its guidelines. By the way, for a long time, the CDC is accused, or well, I guess at least within the last couple of years, that would make more sense, has been accused of being just another puppet of the President of the United States, that they on a whim just follow his advice and do whatever he says to do, which I can't totally believe. And the CDC's recommendations are more nuanced, because let's look back to Thanksgiving, by the way. Let's take just a quick second to take a step back to just a little while ago. And I know that the number yesterday is one that a lot of people are going to talk about if they say that you didn't listen to the advice of the medical community, the advice of the talking heads, and you went ahead and celebrated a holiday that might be connected to some of the numbers we're seeing now. And yet, depending on what loved one it is and how much they want to see you and where they're at in their own life and how they feel about certain things, they might want you to celebrate the holiday with them anyway. And there are things you can do, as the CDC or anyone else points out, to maybe mitigate some of the risk of the virus and spread of the virus. But for the most part, if you feel that it just doesn't make sense for you, it's fine to stay home. The thing is, and I continue to say this as I cover the story, and I want to make sure to continue to say this, when you get on the radio or you get on any platform and say anything other than what the talking heads are saying, what the medical people that are put on television are saying, you're accused of telling people to go out. You're accused of putting lives at danger. I've gotten messages on some of my social media pages. By the way, Facebook, The Craig Collins Show, if you want to weigh in and chat with me there, about how I'm endangering lives just by saying that it may be possible to lower your level of risk in these environments if you go into them, much like the CDC. And it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous to me to accuse someone of any of those sorts of things, because the truth is that no matter what we say, and that is myself or the people on CNN or anywhere else, American humans are used to the right to choose what they do with their own lives. That's a freedom that, darn it, we're just used to having it as Americans, if you're someone that's trying to control that freedom. And so people will make their own decision regardless of how I tell them to behave. And so in that world in which we all just accept that, much like the CDC does and not like this doctor does, you wind up finding out that if you do certain things, that it might be safer. And if it's not, it's just a byproduct of the fact that, as I've seen on story after story, we have what is called pandemic fatigue. At the beginning of this, in say April, May, whenever the lockdowns were prevalent to so many parts of the country and people were experiencing it for the first time and hearing every day on the news how deadly the virus was, it became tremendously difficult, tremendously challenging for anyone, and that's anyone in the world, I think, and certainly anyone in our country, to really totally perceive their own unique take on a story that was no one could have expected. The lives we're all living this year. I think that the pandemic itself and the significance of the outbreak and just the confusing aspects of this virus and how a lot of people who get it don't have any symptoms, all of those things put together put us all in this state of fear and confusion that made a lot of us very willing to follow a lockdown months ago. And now, after the months and months that have gone by and the summer being what it is, we get into a portion of this process, in my opinion now, where it becomes tremendously more difficult to follow those same guidelines because we have a lot more information at our own fingertips as human beings. You and I have a lot more info as far as how this works and what's happening. And as the numbers get reported, as the information's put in front of you every day, there are a lot of people who just accept that this is a part of life right now and that we hope it gets better. We want it to get better. But in the meantime, there are some sacrifices that some people feel they can't make. And truthfully, whether you agree with those people or not, it should be their right to make that decision. I will die on that hill any day. As far as I'm concerned, as far as you're concerned, hopefully you feel the same way. There are stories in the news that I always say could have waited. I like this, and this is something I'll keep doing. This is a news story that we could have held till 2021 or maybe forever. There is a priest out of the Dominican that is talking about how he believes that Satanism is growing in certain societies and Western cultures and that there might be a need for more exorcisms. And I'm not going to debate the value of that. I'm not going to tell you that I think that guy is accurate or inaccurate. I'm not going to dive down the rabbit hole of whether or not an exorcism itself makes sense to me. All I'm going to say is he could have held this story till after the new year. He could have sat on this one. I don't know how bad it would be to let the people and the demons run wild for a few extra weeks, but it's just a few weeks, and 2020 has been tough enough. So if you're Father Francis Marie Dermine and you're hanging out right now and giving a conversation with someone somewhere about this take you have, just maybe be like, you know what? Let's reschedule for a few weeks from now. Let's get through the new year, and then we'll cover the demonic possessions that may or may not be occurring in a little more detail. But for now, let's just say Merry Christmas and stay safe. That's my opinion. All right, I got to take a break. This is the Craig Collins experience, I guess, whatever I'm calling this. I'm in on the Chad Benson Show. Be back in a bit.
Set Chad straight. Text the show, 323-538-2423. That's 323-538-CHAD. Someone has to do it. Might as well be you. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins. I'd love for you to text the show. Let us know what I'm getting wrong. And if you have a angry tweet that you send out there, know who the host is. Because if Chad's off, I don't want him getting the shrapnel from something I said on the air. Go after me. I'm on Facebook, facebook.com/Craig Collins Show, or follow us on all of Chad's platforms, Twitter. He's on all of them. So find the Chad Benson Show there as well. Over 900 people at a Dairy Queen drive-thru in Minnesota did the pay it forward move. Somebody started the chain. You've heard of this before. I'm sure you've heard of this before. Somebody pays for the person behind them, and then when that person rolls up to the window, their meal's already paid for. And maybe there's some sort of encouragement. Maybe there's some sort of conversation about how it would be nice if you go ahead and do that for the next group. And I've been involved in these before. More often it's at a Starbucks, and you're just walking in the line, and you can actually be seen by people. The thing about the drive-thru that would make me less likely to do it, and I know bah humbug, I'm a terrible person, but I'm enclosed in my vehicle, and I can just drive off, so it would be more tempting to break the chain. But in a Starbucks, I've done it. I've been, in my case, I think the victim of a pay-it-forward thing, because truthfully, I'm one. Often it's just me when I go to these places. I'm purchasing for one guy, and while I might be aggressive in my Dairy Queen order sometimes, I'm not really buying for a family. And that's the one thing we neglect. And I don't mean, again, to talk about this story in a way that makes people like, oh, you're ruining a good thing, Craig. You're ruining something that's valuable. But if you are the person in front of me and you go, all right, I'll pay for the guy behind me. What was his meal? And it's one chicken strip basket and maybe a drink. And they're like, all right, cool, $6-7. I can handle that. That's awesome. And then I pull up next and I'm like, what's the meal for the family behind me? And it's $30 or $40. My experience at Dairy Queen financially has changed significantly in the pay it forward scheme. And I am tempted to just give them the version of my meal that I bought as part of theirs. And I don't think that that's right. And I don't think this happened in Minnesota. But 900 different customers did this, and it obviously made the news there on Care 11. They reported about it. The store manager, Tina Jensen, said that it's the second time that she's been taken back by a sweet surprise and customers doing something cool. She just said one of the female people that had gone through the drive-thru started the process. A lady pulled up and said, just let the person know behind them that I've got them covered. And then the small act of kindness kept going and going and going. About 125 cars in the process had started this kind of thing, and over 900 different customers got meals that were paid for by the person in front of them. But there is a disproportionate effect this has. So I just want to defend, if you wind up in one of these situations and the guy in front of you didn't cover your meal, and maybe the person handing your meal to you and charging you is a tad salty about it and lets you know, just be aware that it might be a one-off, and the guy in front of you might have just been alone, and he might be a radio guy, and he might not have paid the full price. That's just me. I'm just saying, but maybe pay it forward if you have the ability. And I do. Anyway, I saw this story, too. This is in the New York Post, and I found it tremendously humorous, at least to me, because I know a bunch of people like this, and I don't know if you do, too. And I think that the stay-at-home, the pandemic stuff has made this a little more likely to be how your friends behave. But if you have a coffee snob in your group of friends or in your family, somebody who, has their own French press at home and makes everything in the fanciest ways possible and tells you how they can taste all the different products and things, the characteristics of these coffees, odds are they're a liar, according to a new study. A study by addiction researchers revealed that the beloved beverage is fooling drinkers into yearning and thinking that, all the different products are all that different. Addiction can be characterized as a condition where there's an increase in wanting something and they're not being met with concurrent increases in liking that product. So you want it more than you actually like it. You talk about it in different ways. You become this serious version of a person with coffee because you think that you have to be one because your addiction has gotten out of control. And I know a bunch of people that drink coffee every single day and can't function without it. The study involved 56 different students, 24 of which described themselves as heavy coffee drinkers, meaning they consumed at least 3 cups a day, and 32 occasional to non-coffee drinkers. Scientists surveyed the participants different images, giving them a different set of images and a range of questions as to just how much of an expert in the world of the coffee beverage they were. And those who were addicted to the product also did not accurately demonstrate, but did think that they were experts, that they were, coffee enthusiasts to a degree that the wine expert out there thinks they're a wine expert. And truthfully, it might just be that you're addicted to this product. It is It does have caffeine in it, much like some other products out there in the world that create a very big mental connection between the two, according to the scientists. I love it. I love the fact that this is a smear campaign. This entire study is just an attack on any friend you have that's unbearable in the world of telling you that these coffees are great, that they suggest buying this one on Amazon, because it's from this other country and it's got all these wonderful tastes to it. And the reality is, bro, you have no idea what you're talking about. You just want your addiction to feel a little bit less bad, so you go the full world in that regard. And I'm entertained by that. I don't know about you. Breakdancing is going to be an Olympic sport in 2024. The Olympics got delayed. They will be taking place in Paris in 2024. And now we get elite breakdancing as part of the Olympic Games. And look, we all need to have more fun. We all need our spirits lifted. I talked again and again about how the world of sports this year should have been in a Thunderdome, and it should have been all the best athletes playing all the sports at the same time and not just their own. I would have loved to see LeBron play all the different major sports and just have a subset of world-class athletes go to some sort of Olympic Games of our own sports here in our country. And so if Paris is going to do breakdancing in 2024, and maybe we need uplifting as a society, as a world in that at that point, we should just get more aggressive with what an Olympic sport is, not just breakdancing. Let's go full bore, anything and everything that you think is at all unique. Let's give gold medals to a bunch of people. And I know the millennial in me is talking now. The participation award is not okay. It doesn't make us better people. But come on. A few years from the horribleness that has been this year, if we get an Olympic Games where you have breakdancing happening and all kinds of other sports taking place, I think that that's a really good spot for us to be in. I think that if you have, and video games are going to be an Olympic sport, and it's going to make a lot of people very, very upset. But the day will come where you can look at your child and have a conversation with them about how they're maybe playing too many video games, and they can look back at you and say, I just want a gold medal someday, Mom. And you're going to have to say, fine, I'll let you keep playing Fortnite and not do any of your homework. That'll be okay. It's going to happen. That is definitely another thing that's out there in the world. So let's just embrace it, at least for the time being. We can go back to the world of regular Olympic sports, say by 2028. But in 2024, let's not just do breakdancing, guys. I'm pushing you to go even further. And I don't even have ideas. I don't know all the sports that we might come up with, but we have time. We can make up sports. We can just put a bunch of different things together like basketball and just play that on a grand scale. I think that'd be great and something I definitely need in the next few years. Although I wonder if everything gets better, hopefully very, very soon. I will change my mind by the time we actually get to 2024, and it'll be too late. We'll already have all the Olympians there winning their gold medals in the quote-unquote sports I've created. And hey, you know what? If that's the biggest mistake I make, that's totally fine. This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. After the break, I want to ask you if you've become a germaphobe because of the year that is 2020. There's a lot of things that we've been doing to contain the virus as far as washing our hands. I don't know if you sing happy birthday to yourself while you're doing that sort of thing, but there's a lot of people that are going that road, and they don't see an end in sight to that. So is it going to affect your interactions with other people? Are you going to stop shaking hands, stop hugging as much? That is one thing out there. There's a survey covering that. And also, Jake Tapper, the latest blistering commentary on the Republican Party. I will get to that in a bit because I continue to be amazed at how the bias is not even hidden anymore. This is the Chad Benson Show. As I said, I'm Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Chad is back on Monday. The Brian Kilmeade rant has gone viral. I love this rant. Brian is talking about Hunter Biden, a story that maybe a lot of people just forgot. Do you think that's what it is? That's got to be what it is, right? There's no way there's bias involved in the decision making at most of the news organizations as far as what stories they cover and which ones they don't. They just kind of forgot. There's too many other things in the news for them to hit on this. But Brian on Fox and Friends went into great detail about the ridiculousness of the fact that this story, there is actual hard proof on a laptop computer that was provided to a business owner who's now out of business because people revolted against the guy, even though he went with the FBI before going with Rudy. Most organizations will tell you, or most people believe, that he went straight to Rudy Giuliani and turned this into a whole thing. And that's not the truth. He turned it over to the FBI first and spent 8 hours with them, as Brian will mention, and now eventually went out of business because of the kickback, the fight back against the information he was putting out there in the world. But Brian, go ahead and take it away. The Hunter Biden story, it's still a thing to some people, maybe not everybody.
This way. There's one guy that got unimpeachable integrity, and I dare you to challenge it, Tony Bobulinski. And he uses this term big guy. And I'm just wondering, when his tax attorneys had a chance to itemize the Kazakhstan transactions, the Moscow transactions, the Ukrainian transactions, and the Chinese transaction, if there's a line there for the big guy. Because it's pretty specific what Tony Bobulinski said. And what is amazing is you have CNN's Jeff Zucker says, I don't think we should be repeating unsubstantiated smears just because the right-wing media suggests we should. They're not smears. There's actual emails and interactions with government officials and meetings with perhaps maybe the future president of the United States that's never been asked nor substantially not denied. When you have pictures of yourself naked smoking crack and it's not the worst thing on your laptop, you're in trouble.
I mean, that's a great point in general. I feel like that could be a bumper sticker in and of itself from Brian. If you have pictures of you naked smoking crack on your laptop and that's not the worst thing on the laptop, you could be in trouble. Reassess life at that point. Take a quick break, hit up a Starbucks and have a few words with yourself about how you need to change some things. Go ahead. Keep going, Brian.
So that is what's on that laptop. And I feel bad for that repair person. There's all this carnage along the way. He took in a laptop. He couldn't get a call back from Hunter Biden, and now he's destroyed, out of business, and he's shuttered. What he did is call the FBI and said, take the hard drive, and then later he got in touch with Rudy Giuliani. And now, after 2018, the FBI is finally emerging, perhaps, with the results of an investigation. Bobulinski sat for between 5 and 8 hours with the FBI to tell what he knows about international transaction with a guy who's constantly recovering from crack addiction, who happens to be the son of the would-be, possibly, president of the United States. And people are saying, we're not going to cover this? This is outrageous. This makes the Facebook, Twitter freezing of accounts look minor.
I think he's right. I don't know if you think he's right. I think Brian is right there. Let's see what actually is being covered then. Let's check in with Jake Tapper and see what he's afraid of, what he's worried about. It's probably going to be something about Hunter Biden or something about coronavirus. Those are obviously the topics they're talking about on CNN, right?
There is a threat if you go against the president, and it's not just the president issuing the threats. The New York Times asked Kim Ward, the Republican majority leader of the Pennsylvania Senate, if she would have signed a letter supporting Trump's claim that there was fraud in the election process. And she told them, if I would say to you, oh, I don't want to do it, I'd get my house bombed tonight. I mean, Gloria, this is where the Republican Party is now. If you cross the president, you actually fear for your life.
Oh, okay. That's what they're covering. It's not the other thing. It's not the Hunter Biden thing. It's not any of those stories. It's the fact that I can't believe he says this at the end. To me, this is surreal.
This is where the Republican Party is now. If you cross the president, you actually fear for your life.
I don't know if as the years go on, some people will remember the president of the United States as if he actually was a dictator. I think that some people will remember him as if he actually was successfully a dictator and not a common president of our country. An uncommon president of our country. It's surreal. And I know that they're talking about some real things within that little clip, and the fact that there are Republican people that are a part of the process here, that are, when these results are being challenged in certain states, it is Republicans that have been in charge of that process, and it is Republicans that are pushing back on these lawsuits from the president that are being thrown out in a quick process for the most part in a lot of these courtrooms. And yet I do not understand how you can claim to be at all anything other than a very, very biased, because that's the part of it too. This is the most annoying part to me. And I don't know if it's the most annoying part to you. It's something that our current president, I believe, really shined a light on in a very valuable way. Just how much hypocrisy and just how much bias exists in the world of media, not just Fox News, not just the places that have been made fun of in the past and the places that you may or may not be getting your information anyway, but all of it. Any individual who takes a television show, for the most part, I can't think of many names that fall outside of this truth, has bias within their reporting. Where are the days of individuals, many journalists taking to all different kinds of platforms and having conversations that are in the middle? We have a president, the current president of our country, claiming that there was voter fraud, claiming he has proof, and wanting to have his day in court and trying to have his day in court. That is a story that exists in the world. And most people that dismiss this also dismiss the fact that he is currently the president. And that is the part that makes no sense to me. Does he have supporters? Does he have voters that would like to see this process go all the way to the Supreme Court, be discussed there in a case to be decided on at that level? Absolutely they do. Millions and millions of people. And whether or not you think he's deranged, whether or not you think he's evil or bad or threatening to kill people, as Jake thinks, he's the current president, and we do need to hear out the claim in a courtroom that I think the American people can process. Because right now, and this is the biggest thing to me, and something I'll say again and again as I discuss this story, the reason why these lawsuits being thrown out, if you're someone that hates the lawsuits, and it's not just people on the left that think the lawsuits are a bad idea. There are people on the right that think this is too far, too much, give up, move on, run in 2024. That is a sentiment that exists, maybe not in quite the degree that some might say it does, but it does. People do feel that way. And if you feel that way and you'd like to see all this go away, you want to just see it in a courtroom you can comprehend. You want to see all the facts laid out in a way that most of us who are not lawyers that practice, but people that have seen an episode of Law and Order would like to follow the information. And until the coverage of this, until the legal aspects of this can be put in front of the American people in a digestible way, guess what? Those people that you're upset at, no matter what side they're on of this conversation, because they don't believe what you believe, won't change their mind. And I've had a lot of people tell me that even if it gets to the Supreme Court, even if the decision goes that road and it gets tried to some degree and some of this gets put out in the world for the public to consume, it still won't change an opinion. But at least we did it. At least we went that far through the process. And actually, I had a conversation with a teacher the other day, and this is someone who very much believes that all of these things are crap, that all the lawsuits are bad and killing our country, and they're a threat to our lives, as Jake says.
This is where the Republican Party is now. If you cross the president, you actually fear for your life.
This teacher that's a friend of mine believes those kind of things a lot more than I do. And I just asked her a simple question as sort of a back and forth here. I said, well, how do you deal with a student that you feel is maybe being too disruptive in class? A student that, much like to you, in the case of the president, is saying and doing things on a platform that you'd like to stop this student in your classroom from continuing to utilize. And I asked, and she said, well, it's a few different approaches. You talk to the student alone and try to get them to behave better. You talk to the parents, of course, and try to get them to get the student to behave better. And if none of that works, eventually, in front of the classroom, you address the issue. You address it that way. And I don't believe that our president can be compared to the student in this example. I was just doing it to get through to my friend in a way that I thought made sense. But I said, well, look, in your opinion, then Donald Trump is a disruptive student in your classroom, the president of the United States, and the American people need this to be addressed in front of the entire classroom, in front of our country, on the platform that it's best suited for, via the Supreme Court, via Lyon and Ted Cruz, and everybody else being a part of it, so that we can finally try to process it a bit better than the news headline that, lawsuit thrown out in Pennsylvania, lawsuit thrown out in Michigan, that doesn't give us any context as to what's going on, and then the back and forth crapping on of everyone involved. And I do get it. I mean, I watched the Rudy Giuliani thing, which was made fun of by a lot of places, including Saturday Night Live. And some of the people they brought in front to testify are people they probably would choose different individuals, if they got a do-over there. I get it. I get some of that reaction, but we have to see it through. You have to. The guy's the president of the United States, and he has supporters, whether you are one or not. You swallow the pride there and understand that it's got to see the final process, the final conversation has to happen in a way that we can all digest. And if he's a student that's being disruptive in the classroom, he will, much like this teacher said, inevitably have his behavior fixed by it being in front of everyone and then people not listening anymore. But that might be what happens. We just have to get to that process. One last quick story, and then I got to take a break here. Domino's is offering you 60 years worth of pizza if you name a kid Dominic or Dominique after Domino's. I guess this is in Australia, and you get entered into a contest because that's not exactly a rare name, and someone's going to win $14 every day of pizza for the next 60 years. How do you describe that to your kid? That's my only question. If you did this, if you win and you just eat Domino's all the time with the kid growing up, he's not going to understand at, a few years old. But there's going to be a point in his life where you sit down, Dominic, and you're like, by the way, thanks for dinner. Let me explain to you how you helped provide this to us. And I don't know how they feel then. If they're like, my name was important, but pizza was too. You wanted to name me something else. Name me after grandma or grandpa, but you went with this name so that we could get free food. It's fine. 2020 was a hard year, I guess, so I get it. But one meal a day for the next 60 years, if you name your kid Dominic or Dominique after the Domino's brand. And lots of companies do this, and I never understand. I'm always tempted, but I never understand how people actually win these things and then how you have that sit-down chat. Or maybe you just don't have it at all. Maybe you just skip that one and let Dominique live his life, or Dominic, thinking that, this was the name we wanted for your son, and it had nothing to do with this free pizza. Quick break, a lot more. Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
Check out our Chad Benson Show Facebook page where you can hang out or hang your grievances out to dry. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Happy to be with you today. Chad is back on Monday. A website, insure.com, dove into the expected or the estimated salary of Kris Kringle of Santa Claus, and the number they got, $157,300, doesn't sound like enough. And I know that that's a lot of money. I know that that's a fairly high salary in our world. But for Santa Claus, a guy that's working fairly hard and running a workshop of several elves dealing with the reindeer, all kinds of different deliveries he's making. I mean, if Amazon Prime could ever tap into the Santa Claus delivery system to give everyone in the entire world things in the same day, he would be a rich man. Can you fathom Santa selling his services to Jeff Bezos, being like, new Amazon Prime Santa version? You got to pay extra money, and then he works 100 whatever days. Why did I say that? 365 days a year. That's the number I was going for. And then this would just be billions of dollars. Bezos would have a whole new line in his ridiculous amount of wealth based on the Santa delivery service that's coming to Amazon Prime in 2021. But they said that it's a mixture of things. He manages the workshop. He cares for the reindeer. He makes those deliveries on that one fateful night. Basically, you could be Santa or a pharmacist at a Rite Aid in a big city, and you make 150 plus a year. I do think they need to rethink this. Reading through all the letters, doing some private investigative work to determine if kids are naughty or nice. These are all different salary requests or different job requests that go into the gig. You got to wrap some gifts, although I imagine you outsource a lot of that to the elves that are making the presents. You care for the reindeer, as I said, and you make the deliveries. But if we do really discuss the value here, the financial pitch that Santa would have to any Walmart, whatever, online retailer wants to get you your things quicker, they would be very rich people. Could you see the press conference? Santa and Bezos together making the announcement, and the reindeers and the elves very, very sad about the fact that they're now working many more days a year. I can see that happening. And if we get down the road, I just think he's going to be worth a lot more. Honestly, if that's all you're making, Santa, think about it. Pitch the service, go to the Silicon Valley meetings and just see how it works out. Just figure that out. There was a cruise to nowhere that recently left in Singapore, and it's already returned early because someone on the cruise was diagnosed with COVID-19. They did return safely, they said. The man had tested negative twice as authorities sought to confirm his status. This was after the trip was cut short. The incident highlights the difficulty in cruise lines facing their different challenges as they try to cope with the pandemic and actually be an industry. And I've had a conversation with a lot of different people about how they're probably very unlikely to take a cruise anytime in the near future. But a cruise to nowhere, having to come back because one person had a positive test is definitely disappointing in my opinion. And they had a lot of things on this cruise ship, including an onboard skydiving simulator, which I guess if you're a risk taker and a cruise ship is a risk for you to take, then why not kick it up a notch and do other things? Taking to the sea air as the one of the big attractions to it. The passenger was an 83-year-old man from Singapore. He had immediately been isolated after testing positive for the virus. The man had undergone mandatory testing before even embarking on the trip, along with nearly 1,700 passengers. I do think that there is a valuable conversation about some of the testing that we're performing, some of the rapid testing, and the amount of faulty positives or faulty negatives, the things that wind up getting tested 2 or 3 more times. I mean, we've seen athletes go through a process of testing themselves multiple times and having a positive every 10 tests and then winding up not being able to play for quite some time. So the stress in all this is it's just surreal. At the same time, a lot of people are weighing in, a lot of experts, and saying that maybe the cruise ship shouldn't have tried to operate its business. But you've got to start to understand, and most of us have to start to understand, and maybe not in the world of cruise ships specifically, but a lot of other things, that business owners, their livelihoods are on the line every day they can't operate, especially small business owners and small business families, and they need to find a way to live through the coronavirus, live through the pandemic by having the financial means to do so, and that is a unique challenge in and of itself. So anyone who admonishes this cruise line or any company for trying to find a way to exist, to operate, to be successful, you just have to be honest with yourself and say, if you were in the position, which is the biggest challenge for so many of us to do, so many of us are politicians to do, to put themselves in the shoes of the people they're impacting and say how they would handle it. If your business was forced closed and then you see a politician on the news going on a joyride or going on a trip or getting a haircut when your business can't be operating, you start to get a tad more confused about why you have to struggle so hard to put food on the table for loved ones, even as the numbers and the information from the health standpoint starts to trend in a direction we don't want to see it go. And even as the conversation becomes, did Thanksgiving cost us? Did Thanksgiving affect us? Which is obviously one that we're having a lot of places. But as all that's a part of the conversation, the thing that is neglected often, and even in stories like this of cruise ships, is that people need to put food on the table one way or another. All right, this is the Chad Benson Show. Greg Collins filling in. More in a bit.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in with you today. I'll be back tomorrow. Chad will be back on Monday. Much deserved a little extended vacation for Chad. Very hectic, crazy times we're all experiencing. The president has been tweeted a lot earlier today. And of course, every time the president tweets, everybody discusses it. I don't know. By the way, that's the number one thing that I would say. If you want the guy, if you're somebody that dislikes this man, and you wanted him to stop getting on Twitter and saying things there that you think are horrible, stop covering it. That's the first move, and I cover it. I'm okay covering the presidential tweets, and I don't think that there are times that if I were part of his team, I might have advised the words to be a tad different or a lot different. But for the most part, the social media doesn't make me as mad as it makes so many people. But if you want it to stop, then don't treat everything he types into those little boxes and puts out in the world of the social media as if it's breaking news. But yet again, he's talking about the election. He says that people are upset and they have a right to be. Georgia not only supported Trump in 2016, but now this is the only state in the Deep South that went for Biden, ? Have they lost their minds? ? This is going to escalate dramatically. This is a very dangerous moment in our history. That is the president on his social media page discussing the election that he did earlier today. and a lot of coverage to the sentences that end that tweet. This is going to escalate dramatically. This is a very dangerous moment in our history. And you're hearing a lot of people on television, a lot of people that are biasly on the side opposite the president, saying that he's the one that's causing the unrest, that's causing the potential for danger to exist. And now the president echoing those statements in obviously a very different way. And yet, as we barrel toward what I pray is not a news report of something happening in that regard from people getting in some sort of actual conflict over this, it bears repeating that the president of the United States got the second most votes of anyone that's ever run for president of our country. He did not win the election according to the vote totals and according to a lot of the experts who say that the lawsuits are crap and are being thrown out in lower courts and not getting to the Supreme Court. And yet, if you look at all the different facts, all the pieces, tremendous amounts of support do exist for this man within our country. And you need to remember that person that says that all this just needs to go away and be forgotten. There's tremendous support for the public good. We need the Supreme Court to go ahead and address one of the or multiple of the lawsuits that have been brought forward and thrown out in other courts so everyone can process the story together at a scale that makes sense to a lot of people, even if it doesn't make sense to you, even if you think it's an inappropriate use of the legal system to get a court case that high that you, without any probably legal background at all, any sort of expertise in that industry, in that field, believe you figured out that all of this is crap. Right now, all we do to digest this story, depending on what side you're on, is listen to people like the president and maybe some of the news organizations that support him and the take they have, or you go the complete opposite way. But no one is reading through the court cases themselves. No one is going to that scale. So I'm just convinced, and I'll keep saying it, that I don't care if you think that it's a valid court case or not. It needs to be heard at the highest level in our country because the president of the United States, whether you hate him or not, that office is important, is saying there's fraud, and people believe him. People are convinced that he's accurate, and I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. I'm just saying there's only one way, in my opinion, that we get to a better consensus understanding of these stories, and it does not involve what's going on right now, and it might involve Lion Ted Cruz, which is very interesting. That's a nickname Trump gave Ted Cruz back in the day, but Ted Cruz may actually head up some of these conversations in front of the Supreme Court, and I think it's tremendously interesting. All right, I got to shift gears because some stories make me sad, and obviously even the coronavirus numbers, the illness, the death toll, all that makes me very sad. So what do I need to lift my spirits? Apparently another surprise album from Taylor Swift is a thing that's coming, and I know right now that a lot of people I'm broadcasting to don't care at all about Taylor Swift and her very sad folklore CD that she put out, her very different, her very folk music sounding CD that she made under quarantine with a couple other people that she works with. But she put out on social media today, and it's as trending as the president talking about the election. That says something about our world. They are both highly, highly trending on social media, that a new album called Evermore is dropping tonight. And if you need something to help you get over it, get over everything going on in the world, you just kick back and relax with your wine bottle of choice and listen to the latest Taylor Swift album. To put it plainly, we just couldn't stop writing songs, she said on social media. To try and put it more poetically, it feels like we were standing on the edge of the folklorian woods. Oh, come on. I don't know if I want to keep reading this. And had a choice to turn and go back or to travel further into the forest of the music. We chose to wander deeper in, and that's what's coming to you a little bit later on this evening, the deeper woods journey that is these CDs. I do like her music, by the way, and I hate admitting that, and most people judge me. You might have just flipped the radio off. You might have been listening. I had the take about the Supreme Court. You're like, this guy's okay. I guess it's all right that he's in and Chad's not back until Monday. And then I say that I like Taylor Swift, and you're like, nah, man, I can't do it. But, there's something about it. I am a millennial. I think I've admitted that on the show before. For some reason, I am allowed to fill in on this program, and I do from time to time have a take that gears more toward my generation, and Tay-Tay is one of those takes. But she's good at writing music. She is. And the folklore CD, it might have hit me in the feels a little bit. It might have. And I know you hate that I even use that phrase. All right, let's move on. I have some other silly stories that I like to talk about because it makes me happy. Hopefully it makes you happy. I saw this story and just can't fathom this life experience. And maybe I will interview these people if they speak English. There's a family out of Japan that has been sharing their home with a pet for the last 39 years. It's a little bit of a unique pet. It's a pet that they found. I don't think there was any place that you could just go and pick this one up, even in Japan. It's a crocodile. They had a pet crocodile. They've raised the crocodile. It's now a much larger animal than when they first had it as a baby. Because like you always think that with people who get a dog that's going to be a big dog. When it's a little puppy, they're not judging what's going to happen in their lives. When you're like, oh yeah, that St. Bernard, totally not going to infect your life in a few years when it grows into its actual size. But a 7-foot-long crocodile lives in the house with this family, and they just talk about how easy it is to navigate that world where you just got to let the gentle giant who lives with you kind of do his own thing. He's spending his own time, and it's an entire family, by the way. It's been 34 years since they got him. When they first talked about this in the news, that was back in 2016. Every day my wife is more fed up with me that we still have the crocodile in the house. So I spend my days with the croc outside sometimes. The husband said, how is that just fed up? If you didn't want a croc, if you're a couple, you got some kids too, by the way, in this situation, and the one of you goes rogue on the pet conversation, and I've had this conversation with my wife. We have a difference of opinion with some of the pets. I don't really want a cat. A cat's not my jam. I would much prefer a dog. Luckily, my wife likes dogs too, but the cat conversation is a little bit more of a friction creating one. But if you have a guy that wants a crocodile, and again, I guess it's a baby first, so it looks like it's not going to be a big deal. But once it grows to be not even 7 feet, let's say 4, 5 feet long, 6 feet, I think you're in your right as the missus chucking that animal out of the house, finding a way to set it free and let it go, because you don't have to deal with that. And yet they are. In other news, and this is actually, I guess, staying in the same region of the world, China flight attendants have advised individuals, I think the story broke back in November, but it's coming back up again, through the Civil Aviation Administration of China, to wear certain things to protect themselves on flights. This is for any passenger that flies. And remember, according to the media, even though there was just reports that China lied about a lot of the things, surprise, surprise, that they put out there in the world as far as their numbers for COVID-19, a lot of the media was saying China was getting it right, that they were taking away freedoms correctly. And the virus has really receded there and it's almost non-existent there. Again, those numbers might be a lie, according to new information, which shocked some people, which made me very happy that people would be shocked by that news. But there was this. They said that, you should wear your protective equipment, wear the mask. And also to protect against coronavirus while on a flight in China, the flight attendants are advising passengers to wear diapers. Just throw on a diaper. No real explanation as I dove through how that's part of the PPE experience. Do the double-layered medical gloves, do the goggles, do the disposable hat, do every protective piece of clothing, maybe even cover your shoes. These are all guidelines that are suggested. But also, just throw on a Depends. And I'm guessing this, and this is truly my take, and I apologize for anyone that didn't expect this story today, but are they suggesting that on a flight you would avoid the bathroom via that piece of material you're wearing in order to not, share that space with other people? Because that flight would be atrocious. I'm just going to say right now that if the airlines are trying to come back in all the different places in the world, and if China thinks they're onto something with telling everybody to wear their own diaper on the flight so that we don't have to use the restrooms well in motion, that's a step too far, that might have a counterproductive impact on the industry, and that maybe other solutions need to be found. That's just me. You do you, China. We'll all figure this out together and or separately, since you lie about everything. All right, I got to take a break. Chad Benson Show, Craig Collins filling in.
Being antisocial sucks. Hang with Chad's friends on Facebook, The Chad Benson Show. And if you just need some alone time, head on over to Twitter at Chad Benson Show. Either way, we can't wait to meet the real you.
This is The Chad Benson Show, as you just heard. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I saw a story that had Madonna involved in it, and I'm conditioned in my life, I don't know why, to follow a lot of stories that mention Madonna. And I've been doing that for a while. That's something that makes you a good radio broadcaster, in my opinion, up to a certain age, I guess. And this story, it just threw me for a curveball. And I don't know if this is. I think that this is one of the first indications to me that I feel like I'm getting onto the older side of life. I'm leaving the younger years and going toward the older years. And the reason why is because Madonna, if I say that name and you're a person of a certain age, you think of her as a sex symbol. You do. It's she achieved that status in her career, in her music career. Whether you like her or dislike her, whether her music was bad or good to you is irrelevant. She herself was someone that connected to the world of sex and sexuality. It just happened. It's just a part of how some people become celebrities in this world. And the reason why this story threw me for a loop is because her 24-year-old daughter, who apparently is a model, her name is Lourdes Leon. She is in a new underwear campaign for a collection of products that are Parade and Juicy collections. They've got different writing on some of the clothing items, like "Dude, Where's My Couture" or "Viva La Juicy." And all of these items are modeled by the daughter of Madonna. And the whole reason to bring up this story, to talk about it with you here on the show, is it made me feel old. It made me feel old and creepy to look at the photos, to see it in the news. And I didn't go looking. Google brought it to me, or whatever algorithm is on Facebook or whatever other place I saw this. They brought this story to me, which might say something about the other stories I've clicked on, I guess. But she starred alongside some other well-known models, and I don't have all their names off the top of my head, in this campaign. But it does. It reminds me of maybe the way in which, as we all get older, you start to hear about that TV show that turned 20 or 30 years old, or, this celebrity or that celebrity who's been retired for a little while. When someone who is the status that is a Madonna has a kid that gets old enough to start, and not even like just barely, like she's 24. This is more than old enough to be in a modeling campaign of this nature. And so, I don't know. I just wanted to bring it up and ask you if that's a moment. Maybe this is more the men I'm talking to now than the ladies, although maybe there's something else that comes out that's similar for you guys. But that's a moment where you start to feel like, okay, I'm changing. Things are different now. I've gotten a bit older. All right, let's move on. I love this story so much. One, because the PS5 is like the most popular gift ever. The PS5 and the Flowbee. Those are the two things. If you don't know what the Flowbee is, it's George Clooney's fault, but that is flying off the shelves. Apparently, they're sold out at Flowbee International, or whatever the name of the company is that still makes that product after years of it being a thing. But the other very popular item for probably a very different crowd. I can't imagine that the PlayStation 5 people are the Flowbee people, but maybe they are. Maybe it's one and the same. If you're going to stay at home already in general because of quarantine, but now more so because you got the brand new fancy video game thing, maybe you do need to take some additional precautions and do things like cut your own hair with a Flowbee. So maybe you buy both. Maybe there's a bundle. I don't know. But this story is great because gangs, and usually that sentence doesn't exist. This story is great because of gangs, but it is. They're doing a Fast and Furious style heist, and they're pulling over trucks, different, and I think this is happening more in the UK here than in the United States, that are hauling PS5s to steal them. They're doing high-speed chases or high-speed interactions to some extent. And if I was a driver of one of these trucks with a bunch of PS5s on it and some people are trying, I would just pull over. I'd be like, this is fine. Just, I don't know. I'm not going to risk my life to prevent this product from being taken off my truck. But this is happening more and more because of just how valuable, how excited, how intense the demand is for this product. And I don't know if this is happening to Flowbee, although I hope so. I do hope that if the PS5 is so popular that people are stealing them off of trucks, that there's a Flowbee driver somewhere that had an interaction where someone took them off of his truck, because that would be a success that they never saw happening at Flowbee International, a company that I'm pretty sure I made up, that they would once have a Fast and Furious heist happen to them. But just in time for Christmas to get a message in the email or wherever you get it after you buy a PlayStation 5 that it was stolen off the delivery truck and we're sorry it's not going to get to you in time this year. But remember, your Amazon Prime membership, tremendously valuable. It's just surreal. It's surreal to me because also, last thing I'll say about the video game console that people may or may not care about, it's also not going to be great right now. There's very few video games that are built for it. So you buy something this early on. It's like the first guy that got a Blu-ray player when they were a thing. He only had 2 Blu-rays, and neither one of them was a really great movie. It was just the experience of seeing it a different way that made people excited. That's the PlayStation 5. Play the video games that all the other nerds can be playing, and I say nerd lovingly. Don't get mad at me. All the other nerds are playing on their PlayStation 4, but play it different this year. Unless Vin Diesel took yours, then we're sorry about that, but we'll try to get one back for you next year. And maybe consider the Flowbee. And one last thing on that product, by the way, since it is sold out and you can't get it, I'm fairly certain you can make one of these at home. I haven't seen the how-to post online, but if it's just a vacuum and some trimmers together, I feel like tape is your best friend. I feel like you can make an at-home, on your own makeshift Flowbee, a DIY Flowbee, and cut your hair just like George Clooney cuts his, and do it without having to buy this item or steal it from a truck. But that's me. That's just my opinion. All right, I will get back to serious things after a break here. I will talk more about the news of the day, the rants going on in the world of all kinds of news, some that I agree with and most that I don't agree with, and a lot of people taking on issues that may or may not, to me, be the main headline of the day. I also do want to talk about remote learning. There's a new story about the failing aspect of adult learning for children, for kids. And so all that to be discussed. It's the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. Happy to be with you today and tomorrow. Chad is back on Monday. Rush Limbaugh is a radio host, technically, I guess, a competitor of ours, and yet I have to talk about this. He was discussing the transition on his show, the succession to a new host as he continues to battle stage 4 lung cancer. Why I want to bring this story up is not because of the sadness in that statement, whether or not you agree with Rush's take or anyone's take out there in the world. I think that when someone is battling something like cancer, and when someone is saying things like they believe that they're probably not going to win that battle, this is a time to put those feelings aside, in my opinion, and wish someone well in their fight, in their different challenges that they're facing. There's no reason, in my opinion, 99.9% of the human beings that exist on this planet, and certainly people that just provide their opinion into a microphone, to wish people death. That just makes no sense to me. Yes, there are horrendous criminals that exist in this world, and people that do horrible things, and people that take lives and all sorts of other things. And I think that those are the exception to this rule I'm throwing out there. But for the most part, 99.9%, as I said, of people walking around on the earth, you can disagree with them, you can dislike them, you can maybe even use the word hate as far as the way you describe your feelings toward someone you do or don't know. But to want them to die, to me, is an extreme that just makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And yet this is the reaction today on social media to Rush Limbaugh on his show, discussing his transition to a new host as he battles and or believes he won't win a fight against cancer. And Tom Arnold is a name that I don't throw around often. I'm not sure what Tom's up to. He said on social media, "I'm looking forward to Rush Limbaugh's reunion with his maker." That is one of the takes. There's another person, Claudia Jordan, on a show I've never really heard or listened to, Fox Soul, that said, "Satan, please come get your son, Rush Limbaugh." This is in response to the comments he made today, again, saying that he's fighting something very... Anyone who knows anyone that's been through a cancer battle of any kind knows how horrendously challenging and difficult and awful that entire process is for your loved one. And so it just makes no sense. And I was actually just talking to producer Phil off the air about social media, about the way that so many people just throw all caution to the wind as far as the way that we behave in person as human beings to each other. When you can see someone, when you can interact with the human standing in front of you, 99.9% again of people never say or do any of the things that so many on social media are willing to do. And I guess I'm kind of surprised at that point that with how many years these things have existed and how many years the internet's been troll heavy, that no one's ever just thrown that caution to the wind and been that guy in their everyday life or girl in their everyday walking around life. But this is disgusting. These reactions are disgusting. Jason Johnson said, Rush Limbaugh is trending. He's talking about Red State leaving the union. How would that happen? Blah, 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 blah. And most importantly, I doubt anyone will be happy needing a passport to attend different games. Rush Limbaugh isn't a patriot. Patriots don't talk about breaking up the country traitors do. Not to be insensitive, but Rush Limbaugh isn't long for this world, so he'll burn it down before heading down himself. These are some of the takes that people have on social media about Rush. And I would beg you, as a human being, as a person, when you go back and look at what you're about to send into the ether that is the internet and what you're saying, and no matter how much you're seething with anger toward what you feel are years of broadcasting and things that you disagree with, realize what you're doing. Maybe that's all we have to do. Maybe social media, it's so easy to feel like it's fake, like every part of the interaction that you're doing, every part of it isn't a real interaction because you're just typing into your computer and hitting send and then seeing a person click a button that says they like or dislike what you said. Maybe all of it feels like it's not real life, so we can do stuff like this. People can feel good about themselves. But anyone that goes to sleep tonight and realizes one of the tweets they threw out into the world was celebrating the death of a guy that's going to be fighting cancer and a horrible battle with stage 4 lung cancer, for whatever reason you think you had the right to say that, try for a second to reevaluate that and picture yourself saying those words to this guy's face, to his face, as he looks like someone who's in a health crisis, in a health battle for his life. I can't imagine anyone going through a cancer ward and making fun of the people that are in it. It just makes no sense to me. It's disgusting, and I beg you to stop. In other news, I see this trending as well. Actually, this is another celebrity out there with a talk show of her own, Ellen DeGeneres and The Ellen Show. Employees are saying that they've lost advertisers, celebrity bookings, ratings have tanked. All of this on the heels of the reporting earlier this year that there was a toxic workplace at this show, and actually even sexual harassment claims have come forward. We're roughly 2 months into the return of The Ellen Show, and things are not going great for her. And yet the one thing I'll say, I haven't seen a single person on social media, and this is good, I'm not saying I want to see it, wish her death. I just haven't seen that come out, and I don't think it should. I don't think anyone should do it, but that hopefully draws the line that I'm trying to make as far as the other story with Rush Limbaugh being involved in this story with Ellen DeGeneres. No matter how much you agree, disagree, hate, like the person they are. In the case of Ellen, I guess all of this is behind closed doors things. In the case of Rush, I guess it's what he said out there to the world that makes people upset. But in both of these cases, these are two celebrity people in our world that people have strong feelings about right now. And I think they just need to pull back. At the same time, though, as far as the gig itself goes for Ellen, I do think now is probably the right time to step away. If you're 2 months into this, if a lot of things aren't going well, if the workplace isn't really feeling all that great, and there's not maybe the enthusiasm that some thought there was, and this does say that authenticity is tremendously important, that you can be someone who's famous for being kind, that has motivational things out there in the world begging all of us to be kind, kind of like I'm doing in this segment. And then if you find out behind closed doors that some other things are going on, it does take a lot of that happiness, that popularity away. And it, to me, makes sense if Ellen just goes ahead and steps down. All right, I have one other story here, and I feel like this is a Debbie Downer of a segment, so maybe I shouldn't do it here. But to me, honestly, this is another one of the things that we could have held on to, unless I guess there's going to be devastation caused by this. I saw this story about a spectacular display of Northern Lights that's going to be possible. I believe it was actually last evening was possible, and a lot of people might have taken it in. But also that the sun is going to launch an explosion of electromagnetic energy toward the Earth. This is a real story that's out there. An explosion of electromagnetic energy, which will take effect over the next few days. I think it's actually going to be happening again this evening and into tomorrow. And maybe it's something that you just witness. You just kind of see up there in the world, and maybe it's fun. And on the off chance, it might actually cause some damage of some kind. But the energy will reach our atmosphere and motivating strangers and stargazers to go out and look into the sky and maybe find some places to do that. But just the title, just the headline, an explosion of electromagnetic energy hurtling toward Earth. Maybe I'm now the one that has too many fears in the world that is 2020. But when I read that, I'm like, this can't be good. There's got to be a part of this that is bad. And so sometimes I just want people to hold on to these things. All right, not all heroes wear capes. And this guy would be a case in point there. So this audio comes from a basketball game that took place in Iowa. Yes, I know. Some people would say it's bad that happened, but it did. And they had a failing PA system. And if you've ever gone to high school, most of us have, you know that the PA systems there don't always operate at a professional level. You know that there's some, like producer Phil, if he worked the PA at his high school, I bet they did great. But every school doesn't have a producer Phil getting the technology right there. And this one sounds like it didn't. So they had a PA issue. They couldn't do the national anthem. And so a dad in the crowd stood up and belted, and I mean belted the national anthem. Somebody got a video of it on their FaceTime or their, wow, that sounded very old, their Facebook or their phone, I think is what I was going for there. And it went viral because it's awesome. This dude just stood up. Now, granted, I kind of think with how well he can sing that maybe he sabotaged the PA system because he probably wanted to be called on in this moment. That's me. That's me going a little bit the conspiracy road. I don't think the Supreme Court's taking that case up, but let's see. Let's see what it sounded. Well, let's hear what it sounded like when a dad steps up and belts the national anthem. And this is a feel-good story to end this segment on. Whoa. Now, look, there's so many levels to this story that I love, and I got the goosebumps, by the way. I think the guy's a great singer. I do feel like his talent does make me more weary of whether or not he sabotaged the system. But I'll also say this, and I don't know if this is one of those people that has a talent that nobody knows about, because they do exist. There's people that can sing that well and just never show it off. And so if you're a kid at a high school game with Pop and he stands up when the PA system isn't working and he's about to sing the national anthem, most high school kids tremendously afraid of what's about to come next. Most high school students are like, I'm going to be embarrassed. I'm never going to get over this. Dad's going to embarrass me. And then that happens. I mean, this guy should probably be in a musical sometime in the near future. But man, talk about taking something into your own hands and making it great. And then, of course, the phones come out and the story goes viral and this guy crushed it. But truthfully, someone watch him at the next basketball game to make sure he's not messing around with the PA system before we get into it, because I think he's probably like everybody else, a little bit bored during the year that is 2020, needing something, and then whatever student he took the spotlight away from probably didn't feel so great that night. But hey, all in all, feel good story, and a lot of the pessimism is just coming from yours truly. Let's take a break. This is the Chad Benson Show. Craig Collins filling in.
Warning, no snowflake zone. Uninformed opinions are in danger of melting. The Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. My name is Craig Collins filling in. I meant to get to this sooner, so let's get to it now. All remote learning is failing many students throughout the country. This is according to a new study. About 40% of school districts across our country have seen the inside of the classroom change a lot in the last 8 months, and their grades tell a very sad story. New academic performance numbers suggest the disruption of in-person education is taking a heavy, heavy toll on students. There actually have been other stories about how students might not even really be paying attention or even taking classes. There's some families that have just given up on the education of a kid, which is very scary to say as a sentence. But there's some people covered in this article talking about their experience. A 15-year-old girl was telling her parents about how she failed one of her classes, an AP history class, that she obviously didn't usually struggle with grades before, but it just was too difficult to get through the process. And AP means that she's a pretty good student for the most part. But it was just too difficult to get through this process in a remote atmosphere with no in-person, no hands-on ability. In Houston, one of the largest school districts in the nation, the number of students with failing grades has exploded. During the fall of this year, 42% of students received one or more Fs in the first grading period, which was 100% virtual for the entire school district. Last year, only 26% of students fell into that category of getting an F, which means that number has jumped quite a bit up. One of the families that was spoken to in the area that has 2 children currently in school says these children are struggling to read, struggling to do math, struggling to do everything in this remote environment. Is she getting down on herself? The interviewer asked about the kids. She's very critical of herself, very critical of the academic success because they just want to do better and they're not really able to navigate some of the challenges that are coming up, and certainly with a teacher that may or may not be terribly available, because that is another interesting component to all this, right? So if you're a kid that that maybe you weren't a straight A student to begin with, but you were someone that was getting it done. We all know a lot of people like that. And then you go into this remote atmosphere and it impacts you, and you're one of the from 26 to 42% of students that now get an F in one of your classes when that hadn't happened to you before. The amount of discouragement, the amount of impact it's going to have on your mentality and your ability to push yourself through that if you don't really see a solution that makes sense in a virtual environment is tremendous. And then if that happens, you start to, I assume, if you're a student that's already struggled a bit and is ashamed of that, may struggle more. One of the people involved in the study from the American Association of School Administrators said that we know that there has been a significant loss of learning, but I'll tell you we're less concerned about that than we are about the social and emotional factors that also take place when kids are not in these environments. We're seeing an increase in the stress that students are feeling, the emotional impact that is having on them. We're carefully tracking suicide rate, which is a major factor here in their understanding of processing all this data. So we are more concerned right now about the emotional well-being of our students than even their academic success. And that is often lost in any portion of this conversation because so many, and this is hard for some of us to fathom who didn't grow up with social media being a thing from when you're, a kid, when you're old enough to have to ask mom and dad if you have permission to be on Facebook or be on social media platform of choice. But so much of your life is lived virtually already. So many people talk about the judgment that takes place in that environment and how it's hard mentally for kids to process, understand, and deal with some of the struggles that exist from being social media people at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever age it is that you think it's appropriate to let them on there. And now in this world, we're the one bastion left of having to interact in person, having to get to know how to be a human being in the actual world and not just the social media world has been stripped away. Now even that aspect is all virtual. All the interactions are via computers and videos and whatnot. And it definitely impacts the way in which, and I know that there's so many stories about the pandemic itself and the health struggle that so many of us are under. But it seems like all of these conversations that we have, whether it's about closing things down or the way in which the education system exists, every single one of these conversations to me just feels like we're having them a tad one-sided, and I'm saying that nicely, a lot one-sided, and not having nuanced versions of these conversations, maybe because none of us have the patience for it in this time and age, in a world in which so much is digested via Twitter. None of us can really hear a conversation where it's, you're right, the health concern is a thing, but maybe these other issues should be concerned. No one can hear that. All right, I'll end on a happier story. Well, happy in a way, I guess. Happy to me because it makes me laugh. There's a dude that's been walking around in League City, Texas, wearing a karate outfit that's wanted by the police because he's getting in fights with people. He's committing assault, so he's definitely wanted and definitely not an awesome guy. But I'll tell you that if you see a guy walking around yelling at people wearing a karate outfit in the world that is this world, I would just try to get away from that human. I would not interact with them. I'd not want to talk to them. Cobra Kai is a great TV show. I'm enjoying it a lot. The reboot of the Karate Kid movie via television. But I don't want to fight people. Maybe this guy watched one too many episodes of that show, and now he's just out in the world. He's definitely a Cobra Kai and not a Miyagi-Do guy because you're supposed to be peaceful if you follow the teacher. I like the show, as you can tell. I dove too deep there. But he's out there in the world. The police are looking for him as of Monday. Any information, you go ahead and call the local authorities there in League City, Texas, and find this dude. Although I feel like he's going to stick out if he's going to keep walking around in the karate outfit. I imagine there's not many of those guys hanging out in the world in Texas. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I hope that everyone is doing well. I hope that you're staying safe. I will be back in with you tomorrow. Chad will be here on Monday, so I'm hanging out with you again tomorrow. It's been a lot of fun being on the show today. And just a quick mention to anyone out there that is getting into a TV show, whether it's Cobra Kai or anything else, don't take that out into the real world. Don't go out into the streets and try to be that guy that you just saw on your 10-hour binge in public because it's not going to work out. And I imagine they will eventually catch this dude somewhere in Texas. And I wonder what belt he's wearing, by the way. It says he's got the karate outfit. I don't know if he's ever taken lessons. Some people take that very seriously. You can't throw on the black belt if you didn't earn it, bud. I hope that it's a lower scale. And it just takes one guy who also knows how to fight to beat the crap out of him for this story to just be gone. Just one interaction, one overly confident karate-dressed man going up against a guy he's not expecting to be good at fighting. And this story has a very quick ending. All right. Talk to you again soon. Craig Collins filling in. Chad Benson Show.
This is The Chad Benson Show.